Perhaps the biggest mistake you make every day isn't in what you do, but in how you sleep. It sounds strange to hear that, I know. Most people believe that prosperity comes from visible effort, from rushing around, from constant sacrifice. But what if I told you that some of the most profound turning points in your life don't happen when you're awake, but when you finally fall silent? So subscribe to the channel and like this video because what you're going to learn today will change your financial life for the better. Many people work hard, think positively all day long, and yet still feel like something is holding them back. Their minds tire, anxiety grows, and the feeling of always being behind never goes away. Now, here's the counterintuitive part. It's not a lack of action that prevents progress. It's an excess of internal noise. A restless mind may move, but it rarely progresses. There's a moment in the day when the mind lowers its guard. A moment when it stops fighting, comparing, doubting. It's then that patterns are reinforced, decisions are matured, and prosperity begins to be organized from the inside out. Few people pay attention to this. Even fewer use it to their advantage. And that's exactly why listening to the right message before bed can generate effects you can't explain, but you feel. If you've ever woken up with a different kind of clarity, a strange calm, or a quiet confidence, even without knowing why, it wasn't by chance. It was your mind, working behind the scenes. And if you learn to consciously direct this process, one night might not solve everything, but it can start something that completely changes how you think, decide, and build your prosperity from now on. What really happens to your mind when your body rests? When you lie down and your body finally slows down, something curious happens inside. The conscious mind, the one that questions, doubts, and interferes all the time, begins to let go of control. It's as if the guard at the door takes a break. In this state, the subconscious becomes more exposed, more receptive, more malleable, and it is precisely there that prosperity begins to be cultivated, even when you think you are just resting. Perhaps no one has ever told you this clearly, but while you sleep, your mind continues to work, only without the noise of fear, haste, and comparison. It is in this silence that old beliefs reorganize themselves and new patterns find space. The mind functions like fertile ground at night. What is planted there, with repetition and the right emotion, begins to take deep, almost invisible, but extremely powerful roots. Have you ever noticed how sometimes you wake up with a different kind of clarity, as if something has clicked? It's not by chance. It's the disciplined mind working behind the scenes. While the body rests, the subconscious reorganizes thoughts, adjusts mental frequency, and prepares the ground for better decisions the next day. And when you understand this, you begin to realize why. What do you hear at night? It has such a different impact than what you hear during the day. Why listening to messages at night is different from listening during the day. During the day, your mind is in defense mode. It's constant demands, notifications, problems, and other people's opinions. Even when you hear something good, a part of you filters, questions, compares, and often blocks it out. At night, this mechanism weakens. The mind becomes less rigid and more open to self-suggestion. It's like trying to write on hard paper during the day, and on soft paper at night. The mark becomes much deeper. That's why a message heard before bed doesn't just pass through logic. It goes straight to the subconscious. It doesn't require effort. It doesn't demand struggle. It doesn't generate resistance. It enters like a calm, almost intimate conversation. And when the subconscious receives ideas linked to prosperity, abundance, and mental clarity in this state, it begins to treat them as a reference, not as a distant theory. Perhaps you've already felt this without realizing it. That idea that pops up out of nowhere the next day. That firmer decision. That feeling of silent confidence. It wasn't a coincidence. It was your mind working in the background, adjusting your mental frequency while you slept. And when you understand this mechanism, you begin to realize that true power lies not only in what you think while awake, but in what you allow your mind to absorb when control relaxes. And this leads us directly to the role of the subconscious as fertile ground. The subconscious is like soil. Everything you plant grows. Think of the subconscious as a soil that never sleeps. It doesn't judge, doesn't question, doesn't decide if something is good or bad. It simply accepts and multiplies. If daily planting is done with scarcity, doubt, and haste, that's what grows. But when you begin to sow prosperity, silent wealth, and mental clarity, even in small doses, the soil responds. It always responds. And night is the time when this earth becomes softer, ready to receive new seeds. Perhaps you've already noticed that repeating an idea several times changes how you feel about it. It's not willpower, it's mental habit. The subconscious learns through emotional repetition, not logic. Hearing the right messages before bed creates internal images that begin to feel familiar. And what is familiar ceases to cause resistance. Gradually, the mind begins to act as if abundance were natural, not distant. That's where the detail that almost no one talks about lies. The subconscious doesn't work with urgency, it works with consistency. One night starts the process, but repetition consolidates it. Each listening session reinforces the internal organization, adjusts the mental frequency, and strengthens the awareness of wealth. And when this ground begins to change, something curious happens. The noisy effort loses ground, and a quieter prosperity emerges, almost invisible on the outside, but extremely solid on the inside. Exactly the kind that few understand, but everyone desires. A consciousness of wealth. Why some prosper without visible effort. Perhaps you've looked at someone and thought, that person seems to thrive without much effort. But the truth is, effort is there, it's just not noisy. Real prosperity is born first from an awareness of wealth, not from an external race. While many spend energy trying to appear busy, others are busy organizing their minds, adjusting decisions, and choosing more carefully where to focus their attention. There's a huge difference between working hard and working with clarity. Those who live in scarcity tend to act impulsively, saying yes to everything, constantly putting out fires. Those who develop a disciplined mind learn to pause, observe, and choose. This constant choice creates a sense of inner control. And when the mind feels in control, it stops sabotaging itself. It seems simple, but it's profound, and it changes everything. That's why prosperity rarely arrives with a bang. It grows like a root in the dark, far from applause. While others complain about the weather, the economy, or luck, those who are aware of wealth protect their energy, nurture their inner peace, and maintain consistency. And when this pattern strengthens, something begins to change almost invisibly. Faith ceases to be an emotion and becomes a mental habit. It is precisely there that the next point begins to reveal itself. Faith as a mental habit, not as a passing emotion. Many people confuse faith with momentary excitement, that good feeling that appears when everything is going well and disappears at the first obstacle. But prosperity doesn't respond to this kind of unstable faith. What really changes the game is practical faith, trained as a mental habit. It's waking up without external guarantees, and still keeping your mind aligned with purpose, focus, and consistency, even when no one is seeing results yet. Perhaps you've experienced something like this. You started confidently, then time passed, results were slow in coming, and doubt tried to take over. That's when most people give up. Not because they weren't capable, but because they couldn't sustain that inner state. Faith in this context isn't about passively waiting. It's about continuing to do what needs to be done with serenity. It's about repeating good decisions even when emotions don't help. When faith becomes a habit, the subconscious understands a clear message. This is serious. This is consistent. And it begins to cooperate. The mind starts to seek solutions, connections, and ideas compatible with this frequency. It's not mysticism, it's internal organization. And when this foundation strengthens, something even more interesting emerges. The perception that thoughts are not just thoughts. They have frequency. And this frequency begins to shape what you attract without realizing it. That's exactly what the next topic will explore in more depth. The mental frequency that attracts opportunities without you even realizing it. Perhaps you've never stopped to think about it, but your thoughts function as a constant signal being emitted. It's not something overly mystical, it's quite practical. When the mind lives in a state of alert, complaint, and doubt, it filters reality to confirm this state. But when you train a more stable, focused, and open mental frequency, you begin to perceive opportunities that have always been there, but previously went unnoticed. Notice how two people can experience the same situation and react in completely different ways. One sees a problem, the other sees an adjustment. One freezes, the other moves forward. The difference isn't in the scenario, it's in the inner harmony. Those who cultivate prosperity as a state of mind begin to ask better questions, pay attention to useful details, and act with more intention. This changes everything, even without excessive effort. This is when many things start to fall into place. Ideas emerge in the shower, solutions appear in casual conversations, decisions become clearer. Not because the world has changed, but because the mental filter has changed. The adjusted frequency creates space for clarity, and clarity generates more precise action. And when this action begins to repeat itself in small daily doses, something even more powerful comes into play. The invisible discipline that sustains true growth. Exactly what the next topic will reveal. Invisible discipline. Small actions that train the mind to thrive. There's a type of discipline that almost no one applauds because it happens far from the spotlight. It's not about doing grandiose things, it's about doing the basics well, every day. Lasting prosperity is born from this silent training. Waking up and choosing focus instead of distraction, clarity instead of haste, consistency instead of impulse. It seems simple, but it's precisely the simplicity that most ignore. Think of it like going to the gym for your mind. It's not a single session that changes the body. It's repetition. Small daily choices shape internal patterns. Writing down priorities before opening social media, finishing an important task before the easy ones, ending the day with gratitude instead of complaining. These actions train the subconscious to trust you, and inner confidence generates real self-confidence. Over time, something changes. The mind stops sabotaging itself, focus increases, and energy becomes organized. Not because you've become a different person, but because you've raised the standard of what you accept as normal. This discipline creates mental space. And when there is space, the inevitable question arises: where am I directing all this? That's where the next point comes in. The one that defines whether you build your own life or end up living someone else's plans. Defined. Purpose. When you don't decide, someone else decides for you. There's a silent risk that few people realize. Living busy, but without direction. When purpose isn't clear, the mind is easily distracted, accepts any urgency, and chases goals that aren't always its own. Prosperity doesn't grow in this confused terrain. It needs a guiding light. And a defined purpose isn't something grandiose or distant. It's knowing, clearly, why you get out of bed and where you want to go, even if you don't yet know exactly how. Notice how people without direction live reacting. They react to the market, to opinions, to crises, to the expectations of others. But those who define a purpose begin to choose better. They say no more often, conserve energy, and use their time intentionally. This doesn't make life perfect, but it makes the journey coherent. And coherence creates inner strength, that feeling of being on the right path even when the result hasn't yet appeared. When purpose becomes clear, the mind organizes itself around it. Decisions become simpler, priorities align, and discipline gains meaning. It's like adjusting an internal compass. You stop going in circles and start moving forward. And then something very practical emerges. If the day starts out confusing, the night becomes the ideal time to realign that compass, prepare for tomorrow, and close the cycle consciously. Exactly what the next topic will explore in more detail. Nighttime routine. How to end the day planning for tomorrow. The way you end your day says a lot about what your mind will build while you sleep. It's no exaggeration. The nightly routine acts as a final command sent to the subconscious. When you end the day on autopilot, scrolling through screens, reliving problems, or feeding worries, the mind continues working at that same frequency. But when you intentionally choose to slow down, something changes inside. Creating a simple nighttime routine doesn't require complicated rituals. It can be as basic as mentally reviewing 3 things that worked during the day, writing down a clear intention for tomorrow, or listening to a message that organizes your thoughts. These small gestures signal to the mind that there is direction. And when there is direction, the subconscious cooperates, connecting ideas, adjusting emotions, and preparing better decisions. Over time, you notice a curious effect. You wake up less confused, less reactive. Clarity arrives effortlessly, not because the problems have disappeared, but because the mind has been trained to close cycles and open others with more awareness. And when this closure happens the right way, sleep ceases to be just rest. It becomes silent preparation for a new level of prosperity. That's exactly what concludes this whole process in the next point. Sleep peacefully, wake up aligned. When your mind starts working for you, when you sleep with an organized mind, something subtle happens. It's not euphoria, it's not a noisy miracle. It's alignment. That state where you wake up feeling you're in the right place, even without all the answers. Sleeping peacefully doesn't mean the absence of challenges. It means ending the day without carrying unnecessary weight. And this lightness becomes an inner space for prosperity to move. Gradually, you notice small but consistent changes. Decisions become firmer, anxiety loses its power, and the mind begins to cooperate instead of resisting. It's as if the subconscious understands. Now, there is order within. And when there is internal order, the external world begins to respond differently. Not because everything changes at once, but because you change the way you position yourself in life. This is the point that many people feel, but can't explain. The sensation that things begin to flow with less strain. Sleep ceases to be an escape and becomes preparation. Waking ceases to be a burden and becomes direction. And when you understand this complete cycle, night after night, you realize that prosperity is not born from desperate effort, but from silent consistency. And it is precisely this understanding that opens space for something even greater. Now that all the points are connected, it's time to stitch it all together from the beginning, in a way that makes sense to you from the very first word. Apply, decide, and change the game. Now let me ask you something very direct. If your mind creates your reality, what have you allowed it to absorb every day and every night? Prosperity is not an isolated event. It's a silent process that begins with small, almost invisible choices. What you've heard here doesn't work if it remains just an understanding. It works when it becomes practice, when it becomes a habit, when it becomes a conscious routine. Starting today, you can try something simple yet powerful, protecting the end of your day. Intentionally choose what you consume before bed, what you think, what you feel. Ask yourself, does this organize or clutter my mind? Does this bring me closer to or further away from the life I want to build? Because every night, consciously or unconsciously, you are programming tomorrow. You don't need to change everything at once. Start small. A better decision today, a clearer nighttime routine, mindful listening before bed. And observe. Observe how your reactions change, how your decisions become firmer, how anxiety loses its power. Prosperity responds to consistency, not haste. And those who understand this stop running and start moving forward. Now tell me in the comments, what part of this message made the most sense to you? What do you realize you need to adjust starting today? If this content helped you, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue learning how to organize your mind, strengthen your decisions, and build prosperity that begins from within, but transforms everything on the outside.